Hello! We've all heard of the great magician Harry Houdini, but few know about the hardships he had to overcome on his way to worldwide fame. He was inventing new tricks since childhood and risked his life to give people unforgettable emotions. And this story will help you understand how he managed to maintain his passion for the job he loved. The legendary magician stands on the edge of a bridge, shackled by chains. Harry Houdini is about to jump into an ice hole and free himself from his chains in the depths of the icy river. The crowd of spectators and even his closest associates cannot believe that the magician will do what he has planned. But the great Houdini is unstoppable. His lifelong game with death has begun long before that moment. The man dives under the water and his whole life flashes before his eyes. 17 years ago, Houdini was not so famous yet. Together with his wife, Bess, he was touring the United States and had to put on shows wherever he could. And this time, Bess was only able to get them a stage in an establishment that strongly resembled a brothel. Harry is outraged and wants to leave, but his wife hastily starts the show. She announces that the great Houdini will now get out of the locked trunk while handcuffed. One of the spectators immediately laughs at the magician and declares that the handcuffs are fake. Houdini calmly replies that anyone in the audience can give him theirs. The policeman, who doubts the magician, immediately rises to the stage and handcuffs the performer. Houdini didn't expect this turn of events, and his heart begins leaping out of his chest. But it's at moments like this that his desire for greatness takes over, and Harry accepts the challenge. He turns his back to the audience and pulls out a pin hidden in his belt. 30 seconds later, the magician is free from the shackles. The audience's emotions speak for themselves. Now, nobody doubts Houdini's talent. From that day on, he became famous as the escape artist. Harry would gather increasingly bigger audiences, wrapping more and more locks around his body.
But if I did it without any clothes, well, then folks really went nuts.
Bess gets tired of the constant life on the road, and she proposes to stop performing. Harry, on the other hand, is just beginning to get a taste for it. He's not going to die a nobody like his father. Since childhood, when he still bore a name, Eric Wise, he had dreamed of freeing himself from the shackles of a boring life. Together with his brother, they ran away from home to attend performances of wandering magicians. One day, a performer posed as a butcher sawing a girl in half. Although many turned away in fear, little Eric was delighted and didn't take his eyes off the stage. The magician noticed this and called the boy to the stage to help finish the show. He called him the boy who knows no fear. And from then on, Eric began to perform tricks on the streets of the city himself. It even brought him money, which the boy gladly gave to his mother. Their family was poor, and the woman was delighted with her son's talents. The father, on the contrary, did not support Eric in any way. The family moved from Budapest to the United States, where the man continued to be a rabbi. But in 6 years, he never learned English, and for that, he was deprived of his job. Eric saw this humiliating scene and decided to do everything he could to avoid repeating his father's fate. The boy ran away from home early to continue learning the craft of magic. Soon, Eric's father died, and two brothers, under the pseudonym the Houdini brothers, began performing on the streets of Brooklyn. In between shows, Harry peeks into the tent where the beautiful dancer, Bess, is performing. He manages to charm the girl with his tricks, and soon, they become a married couple who travel with other performers. Houdini's brother, who has been left out, begins to perform independently, copying his tricks. In response, Harry wants to do something new and asks the sheriff to lock him up in a real prison. The man does not want to turn his serious work into a farce, so the magician bets his last money that prison will not hold the great Houdini.
Plus, you get to take a free punch.
The sheriff blows off steam, but Houdini just smirks as if nothing had happened. He has trained his abs specifically for his tricks. All this time, the journalist who came with Harry and Bess is documenting what's going on. Soon, all the newspapers will be running the story of the greatest escape in history. Houdini is thrown into the cell, and the sheriff watches carefully to make sure that the performer doesn't sneak anything with him. However, Bess manages to pass her husband a lockpick during their goodbye kiss, and Harry skillfully conceals the fact from the policeman. He escapes from prison and enjoys another wave of popularity. His mother remains fascinated by her son's success and collects every newspaper article about him. Houdini keeps working on making his tricks even more spectacular and risky. He meets inventor and fan of tricks, Jim Collins, who runs his own prop store, and they both realize that this is a life-changing encounter.
Give me time, and I'll figure out the elephant.
I'll give you time. Full time.
Already with Jim, Houdini goes to another prison, where he is left in a cell in chains and without clothes. Knowing about his previous escape, they also tape his mouth. But the guards do not notice an extra finger on the magician's hand, which is a lockpick container. Now all of America knows about Houdini's escape, and his earnings allow him to buy his beloved mother a new house. Jim also works hard and demonstrates a vertical aquarium to his boss, from which he will get out of while hanging upside down. Despite his exhaustion at the end of the day, Houdini is eager to try out the new stunt, and his assistants lower him under the water. But something goes wrong during the test, and Harry begins to suffocate in the container, which is hopelessly jammed. Bess realizes that they must break the glass with an axe, and Jim manages to save Houdini at the last moment. Once again escaping death, the magician remains delighted with the trick and begins practicing the Chinese water torture chamber regularly. The panic over the mechanism's malfunction becomes part of the performance, and when the entire audience jumps up from their seats and demands to rescue the magician, a fireman rushes onto the stage with an axe. The savior turns around to the applause of the audience, and it turns out to be Houdini himself. Soon the artist's popularity reaches the US and British intelligence agencies, who recruit the magician during his tour across Europe. They help change Houdini's birthplace from Hungary to the United States, and in return, want him to find out about the Kaiser of Germany's plans. Harry is forced to lie to Bess to keep the secrecy intact, and she begins to suspect her husband of cheating. The man's personal life and work become intertwined in an unbreakable knot.
With illusion, I could be somebody. Escape from who I really was.
Houdini recalls his father, whose fate he has been desperately avoiding all his life. Once after reading a book by the magician Houdini, from whom Eric took his pseudonym, the boy became obsessed with the idea of catching a bullet on the fly. And so, years later, he is preparing this trick so he can get close to the Kaiser of Germany and complete his job as a spy. The best shooter in the Emperor's retinue comes on stage and fires at Houdini. Bess looks away in horror, but Jim had taken the bullet out of the gun in advance when he was loading it using a magnetic ramrod, and there was nothing to worry about. In Budapest, he passes on the information about the Kaiser's plans to build 7 warships and start a war. The spy's next stop is Russia. Harry also finds time to please his mother and shower her with gold coins, just as he promised as a child. Once at a reception with the family of Nicholas II in Moscow, Houdini asks everyone in the audience to write their wishes on a piece of paper. He promises to grant one of them, and a randomly chosen note reads, "Make the Kremlin bell toll." Since the ropes and ladders are faulty and worn out, the bell has been silent for 100 years, and this wish seems impossible to complete. Houdini only smiles back and performs the trick, astounding everyone.
Well, wonders never cease. Hey, big guy, I bet you'd love to give me a punch, huh? Punch?
Rasputin, who was known for his strength, also puts the magician's abs to the test. A powerful blow affects Houdini's body, but he skillfully hides the pain. Harry learns of Nicholas's plans to attack Japan, and of Rasputin, who controls the Tsar's family. He passes the information onto the intelligence services, and also reveals the secret of the trick. The bell was rung by Jim's sniper rifle shots. The next mission will be much more risky, stealing documents from the German ambassador's safe. And Houdini will do this right as he's getting on stage. He enters the safe, then leaves it immediately, going backstage. The audience is told that the magician only has 10 minutes before he suffocates. During this time, Harry makes his way through the roof, down to the ambassador's office, and opens the safe with the documents. But before he can leave, the ambassador enters the room with a young woman. Houdini hides from them right inside the safe, and the ambassador notices the slightly opened door. The man carefully locks it, and the magician finds himself trapped. The time counted on stage has already reached 1 hour, and Harry is in danger of actually dying. While the others are putting on a show, pretending to cut open the doors, Houdini meticulously works on picking the lock and getting out without attracting the ambassador's attention. Once the man finally leaves, Harry gets out of the safe and walks up onto the stage to a round of applause. Inside the safe on stage are roses and a letter for Bess, a gift for their wedding anniversary. But the girl is not happy with the gesture. Their life has turned into one continuous performance for the audience.
That was all for you.
No, it was not for me. It's never just for me.
After the performance, Houdini goes to yet another formal reception, during which Bess gets drunk and lewdly flirts with one of the officers. At home, he makes a jealousy scene, and they drift apart even more. As a result, Harry himself starts to have affairs with other women. He switches from these infatuations to piloting airplanes, but even that becomes only a temporary solution. Houdini's career begins to decline, and people become more interested in cinema. Jim shows his boss movies with Charlie Chaplin, his new rival for public attention. Houdini doesn't want to bid farewell to his glory, so he comes up with the idea of performing a magic trick outside, like they do in the movies. Although it is midwinter, this only encourages the magician, and he fills a bathtub with ice to prepare for a dip in the icy river. Bess is not happy with the idea, and she argues with her husband again.
Honey, don't worry.
Oh, honey, my ass. You want me to stick around to find out if I'm a widow?
The woman becomes more and more lost in alcohol and other vices as her husband prepares to jump into the ice hole from the bridge. Houdini once again enjoys the thousands of eyes directed right at him. He jumps from a great height and plunges deep under the ice. The man uncuffs himself and swims to the top, but can't find the hole to get out. Bess makes her way through the crowd to see how Harry is doing and is very worried about him. But Houdini still sees no way out and starts to freeze. Thoughts of his mother and her image help the man swim to the surface, and the story of such a miraculous escape helps to draw even more attention to the magician's personality. His own brother, who continues to do magic tricks, encourages Harry to perform even more risky tricks. Now straitjackets come into play, which Houdini gets out of at the cost of dislocating his shoulder. In one of these, he is suspended upside down at the height of a 4th floor. Bess can't bear to watch and leaves to later continue the old argument that annoys them both. Harry can't stop risking his life because that's what people want to see.
On my shoulders, I carry all of their
Sins? What, like Jesus?
The man disagrees. He risks his life to get rid of the human fears that grip everyone's soul. Watching Houdini, people feel that their own fears can be conquered. But Bess has already seen enough of her husband's games with death, and she hasn't received the love she needs from him for a long time. Their marriage is falling apart completely. Harry begins to have fun with his fans, who worship him, unlike his wife. Nonetheless, he does eventually return home and reminisces about how much he and Bess have been through. Harry apologizes and vows not to risk his life again. He goes back to the idea he had long had to make an entire elephant disappear. To the delight of his loved ones, this illusion succeeds as brilliantly as his escapes. However, after the performance, Harry is once again visited by an intelligence agent who demands that he make another tour through Europe. Houdini reluctantly says goodbye to his elderly mother and ends up in London, where he receives news of the impending World War. He gives a performance for the audience, among whom is Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes. The writer is stunned, looking at how Houdini walks through a brick wall and genuinely believes that this is real magic. Doyle and his wife practice spiritualistic sessions, which have become popular at that time. Even Harry's confession of deception does not break the man's blind faith.
If you were to acknowledge your paranormal powers, your career as a magician would be finished, wouldn't it?
Houdini refrains from revealing the secrets of his tricks, though he is annoyed by the man's attitude. Suddenly, Jim brings an urgent letter from Harry's brother. Their mother has suddenly passed away. Houdini is shocked and falls to the floor. He cancels the tour and goes to the funeral. Having built his career on a triumph over death, Harry has a very difficult time losing this battle. Even Jim, out of grief, wants to believe that his boss possesses supernatural powers and can somehow oppose death. But Harry has only once used the image of a medium to perform one of his tricks. That time he and Bess used the story of a young girl's murder. Her relatives, who happened to be in the audience, were greatly hurt by that performance. Meanwhile, the world becomes engulfed in war, and more people face the death of their relatives. Harry continues to perform successfully and even appears in movies, but he still cannot stop thinking about his mother. He gives in to the temptation and turns to mediums in order to contact her spirit.
I wanted to escape the boundaries of mortality, to touch the void, to know the unknown.
But the magician's keen eye spots every cheap trick, and Houdini embarks on a mission to expose the charlatans. He writes a book about their methods and promises to pay $10,000 to anyone who can contact his dead mother. The charlatans begin to threaten the magician with reprisals, and Harry, as usual, takes it upon himself to outrun death by performing a life-threatening trick. This time, he ties himself to the muzzle of a loaded cannon and manages to free himself a second before the cannonball is launched. Arthur Conan Doyle and his wife are present in the audience and invite the Houdini couple to dinner. This time, Harry makes no secret of his skepticism, but the writer insists that the spiritualism is scientific, and he even gives a series of lectures on it. Their dialogue is interrupted by a fortune teller, whom Harry, just for fun, asks to predict his fate by hand. With a grim face, the gypsy woman predicts the magician's death. Lady Doyle offers to hold a seance personally for Harry, and he agrees. The woman convincingly imitates entering a trance and handing her body over to Houdini's mother. Her hand starts writing messages on a piece of paper, and her voice repeats compliments to her beloved son. With tears in his eyes, Harry thanks the Doyle couple for the evening. However, examining what is written on the piece of paper, the magician notes that the words are written in English, which his mother has never known. In addition, the session took place on Harry's birthday, and there is not a word about that.
A mother not mentioning her son's birthday? She never missed! Never! Your wife is a fake. You hear me, Lady Doyle? You're a fake!
For insulting his wife, Doyle strikes Houdini in the stomach, the impact of which is once again felt on his internal organs. Beyond himself with anger, Harry announces on the radio that the great writer has lost his mind and is a danger to society. He doubles the prize for those who can prove their magical abilities. In his soul, Houdini wants more than anything to lose this bet and talk to his deceased mother. he arrives to meet the most famous psychic, named Marjorie. The woman behaves very extravagantly, and during the session mentions Houdini's real name, Eric Wise, and then refuses to let him talk to his mother because she speaks a different language. She predicts Houdini's imminent death, but soon the magician easily exposes the talented ventriloquist's tricks. After the seance, Marjorie finds Harry in his hotel room and tries to seduce him so that the magician would not expose her. Houdini almost gives in to the temptation, but ends up driving the woman away.
When you die, we will make you say whatever we like. We will own you.
This phrase frightens the magician because after death, he will indeed no longer belong to himself. During a fan visit, one guy starts arguing with Harry about spiritualism. Houdini responds with arguments about charlatans, which he has a mountain of, offending his opponent. The guy recalls the iron abs that the magician was boasting about, and without warning, strikes him with several hard blows. Houdini can no longer keep his cool and squirms in terrible pain, but does not seek medical attention. The unsuspecting Bess and Jim help him onto the stage, where, after a few words, the magician faints. It turns out that Harry's appendix is ruptured, and even emergency surgery does not help stop the infection. Realizing that he will not survive, Houdini compares himself to the surgeons, who do a truly useful job, unlike the performer. But the doctor used to take his whole family to the man's performances and thanks the illusionist for his work, which he greatly appreciates. Bess spends her husband's last days at his bedside. She sings his favorite song, and Harry confesses his love for her. At the age of 52, Harry Houdini had eventually lost his battle with death. For 10 years, every Halloween, Bess tried to contact her husband's spirit through spiritualistic seances, but all attempts were in vain. As always, look for the name of the TV series in the video description. In the meantime, let us know in the comments, what do you think the great magician really risked his life for? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like so that more awesome stories come out as often as possible.